Poverty is not just the absence of money, but the absence of opportunity. And the United States is a country where you have both freedom and abundant opportunities. And moving to the United States has given me both. I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria. I came from a close-knit family. I was the third of four children. And the best thing that my parents gave me was the gift of education. Even though I came from a poor family, they gave me education with the instruction that this is the tool that will help me to dig my way out of poverty and ignorance. But what my parents did was that they instilled in us the value of faith, hard work, and not giving up. They made us realize that if you put in the work, you will definitely get the reward. I came without a dime in my pocket. All I had was big dreams, determination to succeed, and the resilience. I got my first job at the age of 14. My job was on a construction site. My duties were to move concrete on a large pan from one end of the construction site to another one. I worked on that day from around 6 in the morning to about 7 at night. At the end of the day, the employer refused to pay me. And the reason was because she did not authorize the foreman to hire me. So I worked from sunup to sundown and didn't get paid. That tore up my spirit. And from that moment on, I decided that I was going to become a lawyer. And I was going to use every ounce of strength within me to fight against injustice, regardless of how powerful the opponent is. I am a man that worked my way up from nothing. I know what it means to feel like you're being unfairly treated, and I'm the person that can stand up to opponents regardless of how big or how powerful they are. Welcome to this interesting episode of Legal Angle with Emmanuel Olawale. My guest today is someone I will call an historic figure. She is the first Latina American woman to be elected to the Court of Appeals in Ohio. And she is a trailblazer, and she's also on the quest to become the first Hispanic American person to be elected to the Ohio Supreme Court. Her name is Judge Marilyn Zayas. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Attorney Olawale. It's so great to be here and to spend this time with not only you, but also with your listeners and your viewers.
Yeah, thank you. Can you please tell us a little bit more about yourself?
I was listening to your story and your introduction, and there were a lot of parallels with your life and my life. Um, I see myself a lot like um, the child of your clients. So my parents were both from Puerto Rico. While Puerto Rico is a property of the United States, it still has sort of an immigrant flavor to it in the sense that my parents, their primary language was Spanish. It is an area, particularly at the time when they were growing up, there was a lot of poverty in Puerto Rico. And there was a lot of discrimination. They faced a lot of discrimination of being people of Puerto Rican heritage. So they both left the island of Puerto Rico when they were children in order to seek a better future. And they migrated from the island of Puerto Rico to the island of Manhattan, which is where they met and where all of us were born. My mother, I see my mother as someone that's very special. She's a very strong woman. She's a very independent woman. She's a very intelligent woman. If she didn't have the barriers that she had in her life, she would have been a nurse. That was her dream, was to be a nurse. But my mom never made it past seventh grade. She had lost her mother when she was very young. And she really poured her dreams into her four children. She really taught us very early that the way out of poverty and the way to have a more open life, a life where you can provide, kind of leave your stamp in the world, is through education. And she used to say to us, education is the only inheritance that I can give you. That was her statement that she said all the way, even when I was in college. She would say to me, Marilyn, the only inheritance that I can give you is education. So very young, I knew that education was going to be my way out. Although my parents worked very hard and they were, my dad was a printer when that was a vocation. So very working class neighborhood, very working class family. But my neighborhood was very devastated when I was a kiddo. I was born in Spanish Harlem, and my family moved into another neighborhood that they thought would be a better neighborhood, but it wound up changing because it became the pickup point for drugs from New York City into the suburbs. And the neighborhood changed like a switch overnight. And that was where I grew up, and frankly, there was a lot of turmoil in my house. So we use the word dysfunctional, and I say to people, "Wow, if you said my childhood was dysfunctional, I would say like, wow, that would elevate it." But I knew that I wanted to be able to move out of my situation, and I was very fortunate because I was able to test into and earn my place in a top 100 public high school. Right now, there's about 24,000 secondary and public high schools in the United States. And that was the beginning of giving me a good path. So between the example that my mother set, because my mother always worked very hard, she always looked for ways to make sure that we had what we needed. She was always taking care of children. She would sew clothes for people. She would alter clothes for people. And she was always looking for ways to ensure that we had the clothing that we need, that we had our school supplies, that we were able to go to school and not have any concerns and just be able to focus on our studies. So she set a really strong example of being self-reliant, and at the same token, a very strong expectation of education, and that would be our path.
Indeed, education is actually indeed the gateway to success. Now, you mentioned that you grew up around turmoil. Can you elaborate? What are those kind of turmoil you went through as a kid?
Well, with regard to, it was with regard to my home life. So my home life, of course, there were many happy moments in my home life, but there was really a lot of turmoil. And ultimately, my parents did separate and divorce. Um, and my mom, found herself as someone who had a very limited education. And fortunately, a few years before this, she had decided to start working outside of the home, and she took a job in a sewing factory. And that became very pivotal for my family because that allowed her the independence to be able to then move out of the home life situation and be able to to sustain her four children, because for several years she was left as being the only one that was providing for the four of us. So I'm very proud of what she was able to do. She was actually a member of the International Lady Garment Workers Union. So she was a strong union member, and had gone actually through the process of organization of her shop. And despite the fact that she had a language barrier, because my mom, she over time she did learn English and has some level of command of English, but it certainly isn't a native English. Despite the fact of her education and her limited language skills, because she was a self-taught seamstress, and was able to find work in the factories and had the stability of working under the umbrella of the union. She was able to really provide for us, and that was really important. We really all kind of grew up with that sort of like internal innate sense of wanting to be self-sufficient, wanting to be contributing members of society. I'm the only girl, so it's also interesting when you're the only girl and you're only growing around boys, and most of my cousins were males. So I think it plays out a little bit in my personality, because I certainly have a lot of gumption. and I'm willing to sort of do things. And when people say like, well, you can't do that, it isn't so much that I'm like, oh, I'm going to do it because you said I couldn't do it. It's more of I always feel like, well, why not? Why are you saying I can't do that? What makes you think that I can't do that? So my brothers, my oldest brother, he's right now working towards his PhD. He had a career as a law enforcement. He was a police officer, and now it's been about 10 years. And unfortunately, he was injured in the line of duty and had to step aside. And he's really alive. It's a miracle that he's alive. And then my other two brothers are teachers, and myself, I'm the one that one day said, I really, my goal is to interview only with companies that are not in New York City. And that's what brought me to Ohio 34 years ago to work for Procter Gamble. My background is actually in technology. So my undergraduate degree is in computer science. And I worked for Procter Gamble for 6 years as an IT manager before I decided to follow my dream and to go to law school.
Yeah, that was awesome. Was your mom there to witness you become a judge?
She was. So she it's kind of cool. My mom was visiting me when the primary was taking place in my first election. And so although I didn't have a primary opponent, I brought her with me when I went to vote, and she got to watch me fill in the little box next to my name during the primary. And then she came back in January after I had been elected and after I had taken my seat when we did the investiture. And the investiture is sort of the ceremonial public moment of becoming the judge. And she and my stepdad came, and I was so grateful that they were able to make it and be able to share it with me, because the reality is I have three children, and they're really the only family, blood family that I have in Ohio. I have a lot of people that I consider family that are just wonderful friends and have been my guardian angels and have helped me so much. But I have just my kids as far as blood relatives. So at the investiture, I had my kids, my mom and my stepdad, and I felt very blessed to have them there.
Yeah, that's what a parallel indeed. Because I also started my journey in New York, and I moved to Ohio just by myself. No families, no friends, just me, myself, and I.
Yeah. But that's one of the great things about Ohio is that people are really very open and very welcoming. And I have found it very easy to make not only friends, I would say like real connections, people that I truly, truly love, people that I say to them, I love you like you're my sister, or I love you like you're my brother. And I have their back, they have my back. Ohio, I think, is a very special, special place. There are so many people here that, although they come from different backgrounds and they may not look all the same, but they will actually pause and give you a moment of their time. They will listen to you and give you a moment of their time, and it's just a beautiful thing. To me, Ohio is my adopted hometown, and I feel incredibly blessed that this has been my home for over 34 years.
It is. Ohio is a state that gives you a hug, regardless of where you come from.
Yes, yes, it's the heart of it all.
Yeah,
Has a big heart, and it's the heart of it all.
that is it. So, what was your relationship with your dad like, even after the separation?
I mean, my relationship with my dad, and this really goes for the four of us. Unfortunately, I don't. We were never able to really sort of heal that relationship, and in a way that really plays out into adulthood, in the sense of understanding that in life people go through difficulties, and most people don't really have an opportunity to to really heal that relationship or heal that difficulty, um, and but yet they have to figure out a way to move forward. So that influences me as a judge, because when people come to court, they're not coming to court because it's fun. Oftentimes, when people come to court, it could be their most difficult day. And perhaps there's a whole history of difficulties that they've been through before they got to that moment, especially when it's like family law issues or when someone is being taken advantage of. Most people aren't taken advantage of just one moment. Sometimes it's a series of events that take place when they're being taken advantage of. So when they find themselves in court, one of the things about the court is that we should be looking at ourselves. Part of our roles is a healer, but not in a healer in a traditional sense. So as a judge, if you're respectful to everyone that comes and everyone that's part of a case, if you're respectful to the rule of law, if you understand that the law should apply to everyone equally and that everyone that comes into court should know that they have a fair chance, then whatever that person has gone through that is a tie to that case, it's going to give them an opportunity to be able to move on and heal, regardless of the outcome of the case. Because when you're respectful and you really follow the rule of law and you explain where you're coming from in a very respectful and well explained way, not in legalese, in ways that everyone could understand, you're giving that person the opportunity to move on. And I learned that through my own personal experience of like, look, people don't get this opportunity, but when they come to court, be the judge that everyone envisions of being, that platinum standard, and then you're giving that opportunity. And I also learned that when I was an immigration practitioner. People, when they come from other countries, and you know this because you've experienced this, they hold America not to the gold standard, they hold it to the platinum standard. And when they look at law enforcement, when they look at teachers, when they look at judges, when they look at attorneys, they're looking at us in the highest regard and expecting excellence from us. So as a judge, you have to give excellence. And when I was a practitioner, it was such a wonderful feeling when I was in front of an immigration judge and that immigration judge took on their role with excellence. Because again, regardless of the outcome, because sometimes you win some, you lose some, and sometimes they're right. Like, no, they can go either way, and it may not be your way, or the law may not be on your side. But if you can look at your client and explain to them why it came out the way that it did, and why the judge was following the rule of law, that gives that client an opportunity to move on and accept the outcome. And of course, unfortunately, sometimes we have the opposite experience. And those moments that we say, okay, if I had an opportunity, I know what I want to be, and I know what I don't want to be. And that becomes the guiding light of ensuring that that it is, again, that platinum judicial role that's being encompassed in every single level. Looking for ways to make the court more accessible, looking for ways to ensure that the court is looking at everything that is tied to that case and not leaving any stone unturned. Looking for ways to make things understandable for the public. At the end of the day, looking for ways that that third branch of the government, the judiciary, is seen as the judiciary for the people. And what I mean by that is when we think of the White House, if you stop the average person and said, who does the White House belong to? Folks would say it belongs to the people. And if we were to say, hey, the Capitol, where Congress meets and convenes, who does that belong to? Folks would say the people. I'm not sure that folks would say the same when it comes to the courts, that it belongs to the people. And that's one thing that I really keep in my mind all the time. The chair that I sit in when I go to court, that doesn't belong to me. That belongs to the people. The courtroom belongs to the people. The building belongs to the people. And so the people should feel that they are able to come in and that they are going to be respected and that they belong there and that they are going to be given a fair opportunity and that the rule of law is going to prevail.
Thank you. So you use your own past experiences, the pain and turmoil, to deal with your cases. So that gives you the ability to have understanding, empathy, and compassion because you understand firsthand what your clients went through and what litigants are going through from your own personal experience.
Exactly. And when you face discrimination, what you really want, especially as a child, is an equal opportunity. And that really is the center of what the judiciary is. It's that equal opportunity. Um, when people come from other countries and they come here, they're looking for a better life. And what do they mean by better life is to have an equal opportunity. That's why that's why we all know in our hearts that America is the best country, because it is the country that is willing to accept the poor and the tired and the disenfranchised, and to give them an equal opportunity. So many of our industries and so many things that we know were started by people that were immigrants or that were children of immigrants. So this is really the most amazing country. And frankly, I believe that I live in the most amazing state, in the most amazing country. And I'm sure that you agree too, because think about it. Where else would a young man from Nigeria be able to come and build a law practice and have a podcast, and be involved in a magazine, right? Where else would a little girl who was Latina, who was born in Spanish Harlem, who still has her New York accent, has this weird ballad name that begins with the letter Z, be embraced by a community, and be provided the chance to prove herself? When I was first elected, I don't know if you know this, when I was first elected and I ran in 16, I knew nothing about politics. I had never run. I say this as a joke to make the point. I never even ran for condo association president. I had not run for anything. I didn't know any of the lingo and jargon. I didn't know a thing. All I knew is what a judge taking on the role with excellence and understanding that the law is to apply equally to all, what that looks like. That I knew. And that was my guiding light. And just hoping and believing that God would put the right people into my path. And that's how I got here. I didn't get here by myself. It was all these great people that I met in 2016 that allowed me to get to this point, and all the great people who gave me that moment that we were talking about in Ohio, that gave me that moment of saying, okay, she looks different, she sounds different, but let me find out what she's about. And I had to turn around and I had to run again. And I was on the ballot again I went from November 2016 to November 2018 of being on the ballot. I'm going to move back a little bit just to move away from the sun. And so I'm back on the ballot in 2018. And my goal was to build a judicial reputation so that everyone who entrusted the seat into my hands, that they would feel that their vote was honored. And recognizing that I don't come from a different background, that I come from a different background, I also want to ensure that I am leaving a path so that anyone, male or female, that comes from different backgrounds, different circumstances, that I am opening that path so that they too would be welcomed. So I took my role very, very seriously. And I will tell you that I was reelected in 18 by over 60% of my constituency, which is a number that is very, very rarely achieved. And keeping in mind that I was in the seat for a year and I was back in having to campaign for my next reelection. So I'm really, really proud of that, but I'm even more proud of the people that have given me an opportunity and have recognized that it's okay to be from a different background and a different circumstance. Which really most important is, what are you bringing to the job, and what it is that how it is that you honor the job and how it is that you honor other people.
Thank you. Your diversity of background give you that a kind of skill to be the bridge, and that has we started off doing that as a child, interpreting for your parents. You were the bridge between the American system, the English-speaking American system, and your parents, Spanish-speaking parents. Can you tell us what you did?
So when I was a teenager, that's when my parents separated and divorced. And when I was 19, and I was already an undergraduate, that's my mom was going to the it's called family court in Ohio. She was going to family court and she was fighting for the custody and the protection of my youngest brother. So I have a brother who's almost 10 years younger than I am, and my other two brothers are one is 1 year older, the other one's 2 years older. So I would accompany her because, again, she had limited commands of English, and I was serving as her ad hoc interpreter. And that was the first time that I had any exposure to the legal system in any way, shape, or form, other than watching whatever I saw on television. That was my first like personal experience in any way, shape, or form. And it was very powerful to see the role and the responsibilities that attorneys have, and to see the impact that courts have on people's lives. And right away, I was like, I want to be part of this one day. And I envisioned myself as one of those attorneys standing next to people in their most difficult time. And I'll be honest with you, I never dreamt as big as being a judge. I just never fathomed that somebody from my background and my circumstances would ever be a judge. So just dreaming of being an attorney seemed like a huge, lofty dream. And I continued to pursue my undergraduate because my strong suit is math and science. I'm one of those STEM kids before it was called STEM, and I knew that would allow me to be self-sufficient and to be a contributing member of society. And so I continued to do that. But after I came to Ohio and after I was with Procter and Gamble for 6 years, I got to the point of saying, I've had this dream, I've had this seed, it's been sprouting over time, and I just had to do it. Leaving Procter and Gamble, it wasn't easy because I really enjoyed my work there. I really enjoyed the company. Of course, it was a great salary, great benefits. In fact, all the people that I worked with at Procter and Gamble, they are now retired. So they're already in retirement mode. And so, that's, and it was, it's not easy putting that behind you, but in many ways it was easy for me because I didn't feel like I had a choice. I had such a burning to be an attorney that even though the time I was pregnant with my third child when I took my LSAT, and when I entered UC Law, I had 3 kids under the age of 4. So it seemed like an impossibility, but I had such a calling that I just had to do it. And I'm really, it's one of the best decisions I've made in my life.
I think Procter and Gamble was just the bridge to bring you to Ohio so that you can accomplish your dream of becoming a lawyer and eventually a judge.
And it's a great foundation. Procter and Gamble has given me a wonderful foundation that has helped me when I was an attorney and has helped me as a judge, because P&G teaches you about really thinking things through and analyzing, about being collaborative and working with different people. P&G is a company that recruits not only from all over the nation, but from all over the world. So you're always working on projects and in teams that have people from all different backgrounds. And it really, really reinforces and teaches you that everyone matters and how to be collaborative and how to come to, how to bring people together on a common purpose and move towards a goal. So it's maybe it's by no chance, no random circumstance that I was elected straight into the Court of Appeals. And the Court of Appeals is the court that's just below the Supreme Court, where every case is reviewed and decided by 3 judges. So I never decide a case by myself. I have two of my peers, and the goal is to have a majority decision, whether it's two people that are in agreement or three people that are in agreement. And of course, the bigger goal is to make sure that we get it right. So I always say, that American saying that two heads are better than one. Well, three are even better. And of course, at the Supreme Court, then it's seven. So seven are even more fantastic.
Yes, it is. And what was it like for you to juggle pregnancy, children, family, and studying for the almighty LSAT?
Well, I don't know that I would recommend anyone else doing it that way. The same thing with going to law school, with three little kids in tow. Don't know that I would recommend anyone to do it that way. But for me, I don't know that I had any other choice because it was just something that I absolutely had to do. And the yearning was just too strong. So you learn to be really organized. You learn to maximize your study time. You learn to study very effectively and very smartly, which wound up being a great asset for me, particularly when I ran my own office. I, you know, I started off working for a huge firm. I was an intellectual property litigator, worked for one of the biggest firms in Colorado, but my family's relocation didn't work out, and I came back and I took a position with the public defender's office. And as you know, the public defender's offices, those positions are quite infamous for having a very, very, very heavy workload. And so, you have to be really on top of things and very studious to the law, but also being able to move through things effectively, but properly as well. And then later, I wind up hanging up my own shingle and developing a federal practice. And many of my clients were millionaires and they were investors who were building businesses in America. But I also did a lot of asylum cases. And when you do asylum cases and refugee cases, these are not people that have a lot of money. So, for every hour that they're paying you, sometimes you're working 10 plus hours for what would be the equivalent of 1 hour of pay. And so, having those skills of understanding how to do the job with excellence, but being very smart and very effective in maximizing your time, has really paid me. I think it was a foundation that, while it sounds crazy going to law school under those circumstances, it really helped me a lot when I was representing people who couldn't afford an attorney as a public defender, and later representing people who are the asylum and refugee. Because as you know, a lot of those cases you represent in the immigration court, I actually had a very high success rate in getting them granted. But I also had people who came to me on appeals, and I would, be appealing to the Board of Immigration Appeals and be appealing to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, which were very, very in depth and very, laborious work of putting those appellate briefs together, but very important, passionate work because, these are people that are fleeing countries and have their life at stake or their children's life at stake, and they're really fighting in order not to be able to go back and find themselves in jeopardy again.
Thank you. What was it like to work for the public defender's office?
I actually enjoyed it. So I started out in the juvenile division, and in Hamilton County, the juvenile division was seen as the place where you kind of start off and you build some skills, and then they move you into the adult division. Well, I loved working in the juvenile division. I found it to be very meaningful. So almost all my time with the public defender's office, I chose to stay in the juvenile division. And I was one of those attorneys that really fought very hard because you're dealing with kids, and many of these kids, they really they're what we call amenable. In other words, that they really do have the ability to turn their lives around. They have caretakers or parents who do care about them and want the best for them. and want to be engaged in turning their, the kids' lives around. So a lot of it was really, working with those families and with those young children and with the magistrate and judges who make the decisions and the probation officers and so on and the service providers, because, there was also, back then there was a place called Hillcrest. And so, working with those service providers to try to do what's best for this child, because if you can get a child on a good path and move them into being successful so that they don't come back into the juvenile system, it's great for them, it's great for their family, it's wonderful for all of us. And that's what the goal is. So I found a lot of meaningful work and a lot of passion in working within the juvenile system.
And then you decided to hang your own shingle. What inspired you to start your own practice?
What inspired me to start my own practice is that I had gotten to the point that I wanted to do, I'm going to call it more. I wanted to do more, because of my background, and I've always been one of those people that really enjoy challenges. I love complex things. And so it got to the point that it was time for me to move on and do something different. And immigration law, gosh, I'm so lucky that I chose well, because immigration law is very, very complex. It's a series of rules and exceptions, and then more exceptions and more rules. I used to tell people that immigration law is one of those areas of the law that if you're not really careful as an attorney, it could be quite easy to commit malpractice, because there's so many intricate details to it and so many complexities to it, that you have to really keep yourself on top and very well apprised of it. Because it's governed by case law, it's governed by statutes, it's governed by inter office memorandum, it's governed by policies that are set out by the Department of State. And so you have to keep yourself apprised of all of those things. And then it's also governed by rules that change depending on the period of time. So you have to look at, okay, so which is the rule of law that applies depending on the circumstances? There isn't necessarily one rule of law that applies that governs a particular area of law. So that for me was incredibly, it was very exciting. It was very engaging. And then you have the human aspect of it. You have the human aspect of it of, whether you're working with someone who's building a business and is really looking for a way to grow their business, or whether you're looking for, working with someone that's looking to bring their family because they've been able to settle in the United States and now they want to bring their family to the United States and to be able to grow their American family. Or if you're, working with someone who's fleeing the country and is really looking to preserve themselves or preserve their children, it's incredibly meaningful work.
It is. And apart from knowing the law, you also need some level of cultural competency.
And it's something that's very true, and it's something that plays out certainly with immigration law, but it plays out really everywhere. Because if you look at our community in Ohio, most of the growth, a lot of the growth is coming from what I call new Americans. In fact, in the United States, we are currently in the lowest historical birth rate that our nation has ever experienced. So unless Americans decide that we want to have more children and our young people decide that they want to have children or more children, the main source of growth for our country is going to be by attracting new Americans. And to be successful, part of that is what you're calling cultural competence. Because with cultural competence, what it does, it's just another way of saying putting yourself effectively into the shoes of another.
Empathy.
Yeah. Empathy and understanding, right? And seeking to understand. And 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 seeking to understand first before seeking to be understood.
Correct. And after practicing for over 20 years, you decided that you wanted to move on to the next level. You didn't even start up as you didn't start as a municipal court judge or judge of the Court of Common Pleas. You went directly to the middle court, the one just before the Ohio Supreme Court. You indeed like to do hard things. What is that like for you?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because that's so true. If it's something really simple, I have to like study it and wonder like, am I missing something? Because I'm so used to dealing with the complexity. That's my comfort zone. Uh, when I was a practitioner, I did a sizable amount of appellate work, and I really enjoyed the appellate work. Um, I'll tell you a story. When I was running and towards the end of 2016, my son said to me, Mom, I really want you to win. But what happens if you win and you don't like the job? And I said to him, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And the point of my sharing that story is that, certainly one doesn't know, when you're engaging in something new, you just don't know until you engage in it. Um, Within weeks of my taking my seat, I knew that I had landed in one of the most beautiful places for me, that it was really tapping into everything. I feel as if every experience I've had in my life, professionally, personally, whether it was a wonderful experience or whether it was not at all a wonderful experience, I feel that all of those were given to me to give me exactly what I needed to be an excellent, excellent judge at this level of doing, the Court of Appeals work, and now for the Supreme Court of Ohio. And I just feel so blessed. So it was something that I chose based on my experience as an attorney of enjoying appellate work, but ultimately chose well because it really is at the heart of my skill set. I call my engineering brain, so I have a very analytical brain, which is exactly what's needed at these levels, and also my love for the law and the application of the rule of law to everyone, of honoring, the best way that we can honor our nation and our Constitution is by always striving to make sure that the law really does apply equally to everyone. And sometimes people want to carve out an exception because maybe they don't like the way the law is, and so they want to carve out something. And what they don't realize is that the minute you allow something to be carved out because you like it or because you think that it's more just, but it's outside of the rule of law, then you've allowed for other things to be carved out that maybe are not so great. So, we've got three branches of the government. If there's a law or laws that we don't like that have been passed by the legislature, then it is our duty as voters to really look at who we are hiring or voting into the legislature with regard to the laws that are going to be passed. But that's not the role of the judiciary. To be undoing anything from the legislature. That is not what our role is. Now, one thing that is very different from being on the Court of Appeals to being on the Supreme Court, there's a couple things that are very different. One is constitutional challenges. So the constitutionality of laws that have been passed or will be passed by the legislature, when they are challenged, a lot of those are going to land with the Supreme Court in determining the constitutionality of those laws. And that's going to be really important as to the perspectives of who it is that sits on the Supreme Court. The other thing is that the Supreme Court, they are the ones that set the path for all the other courts in the state of Ohio. So when you're talking about policies, they get to set policy and procedure for all the courts. So yes, each individual court can also set their own policies, but if the Supreme Court says that all courts are to do a certain thing, then they are all to do it. So I don't know if you've heard, for example, of the sentencing database, if you're familiar with that.
Yes.
That's, that's something that the technology has already been developed for it. It's right now in a pilot program. I believe there's 61 judges that are engaging in it. And the goal of that is to have a publicly access, not attorney access, publicly anybody access, online database where anyone can go in and say, I wonder, for a DUI, driving under intoxication, if it's in Preble County, what are the sentences that the judges have given to someone who has a DUI, who didn't get into an accident, who has no prior criminal convictions or activity? What was it like in Preble County? What was it like in the city of Cleveland? What was it like in Toledo? What was it like in Akron? What was it like in Clinton County? And compare, with consistent factors and see whether there is a disproportionate range to sentencing. The reason that that's so important is because it's about accountability and access. And it's about, you know, giving tools so that voters know what's going on, and ultimately, ensuring that we're always moving the courts towards a court. When we talk about just, again, it's part of that is being consistent. It's again about the law applying equally. Well, even though the technology is there, even though there's 61 judges that are engaging with putting in their sentences into the sentencing database, you as an individual and as a member of Ohio, you're not going to be able to look to see how the sentences are unless the Supreme Court has at least 4 justices, 4 of the 7, that says we are going to roll this out and require for all the judges in Ohio to engage and to enter their sentences into the sentencing database and allow public access into the sentencing database. So that's an example of a policy or procedure that the Supreme Court can adopt, but who's there and what their position is on accessibility and accountability is going to weigh into those kinds of decisions.
Indeed. Consistency in application of the law. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, what was the feeling like when you realized that you made history, becoming the first Hispanic woman to be elected to the appellate court in Ohio?
Well, I found out after the election that I was the first. When I realized that I had, that I had been elected, that I had been hired, I will tell you that although I knew nothing about politics, from the very beginning, I truly believed that I would be elected, that I would be chosen by the people. So when the results came in that evening, and my first race was very, very tight. I had won by a very small margin. I was incredibly grateful. And part of me felt like, okay, this feeling that I've been feeling is genuine. I felt a little bit like, okay, so this feeling I've been feeling is truly genuine. So a lot of people expect for me to say, like, I was shocked, I was surprised. And I wasn't necessarily shocked, because in my heart, I can feel that it was going to happen. Now, a lot of people were looking at me like, I don't understand why she thinks that she's going to be elected, because they had never seen someone like me run for the Court of Appeals. But in my heart, I can feel it. So it was just like, okay, what I was feeling was real. I'm not sure where it was coming from, but what I was feeling was real. And then I was just like, whoa, I'm going to be a judge. Like never growing up as a kid in those inner city neighborhoods could I have ever dreamed that one day that I would have the title judge preceding my name.
And here you are.
And here I am.
Yeah.
Here I am, and I will tell you that I've never, and this is a hard thing to explain, and I've explained this to my team when I ran for Court of Appeals, and I've explained it to my team now that I'm running for the Supreme Court. For me, this has never been about Marilyn being the judge or Marilyn being the justice. It was never about that. I see myself as just a conduit. This is really about a judiciary that is serving with honor, with ethics, with integrity, that is independent of outside influences. Because again, when you experience discrimination, it's about equal chance, right? So when a judge steps away from the integrity of their role and pierces the integrity of the court, how can we say that there's an equal chance for folks that are coming to court with their important issues? So that's what, for me, this has always been about. When God decides that it's time for me to step aside and for somebody else to step up, I'm fine with it. I don't have a plan in my head. I don't have these are exactly how many years that I'm going to serve or that I must serve because, and then I can retire or whatever. It's whatever it is that it's intended to be, that'll be. So I just see myself as a conduit. It's just that I frankly just never did dream this big.
Yeah. To you, it's a calling. And you're not even just stopping there. You are you're about to make history again to be the first Hispanic or Latina woman to be elected to the Supreme Court of Ohio. Can you tell us about your campaign?
So I will be the first person of Latino heritage or Hispanic heritage not only to be elected to the Ohio Supreme Court as a male or female, but for the whole region. So that includes not only Kentucky and Indiana, but it even includes Illinois. So despite the fact that Chicago is Illinois, when we did the research and we contacted the Supreme Court of Illinois, we found out that it included Illinois as well. My campaign is really focused on 3 words, and that is integrity, impartiality, and independence. That is what my team and I are fighting for, is to ensure that in this particular seat, that there is a justice that honors those 3 words, that understands that when the people vote and hire us, we must honor those words and keep all outside influences at the door. Our personal opinions at the door, any biases that we have at the door. And every day, just really work hard for all the people. I see myself as someone that is here to serve everybody. Whether you vote for me, whether you don't vote for me, it's inconsequential as to who it is that I'm here to serve. That is necessary, absolutely necessary, to have a Supreme Court and a judiciary that continues to move forward in a just way for this state. As you know, we're in our whole nation and our state is really at a crossroads. Economically, I don't think that we can say that we have fully recovered. We've got some great opportunities like the microchip manufacturing site that's coming to Ohio that can bring a lot of industry and a lot of opportunity. We are at the most, the historic lowest birth rate in our nation. We haven't been able to really put our arms around the heroin epidemic. We still have veterans that are coming back from abroad and are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder and other issues. and drug and alcohol issues because of what they experienced abroad. The pandemic, it's yet to be seen the impact that the pandemic has had on our young people and how it will affect them long term or short term in their psyche and in their education. We have so many issues that we are dealing with. And it's going to be important to have people who are making these decisions, particularly on the outcome of the cases and on the policies of the court, that have had some sort of rough and dirty experiences in life, that it hasn't been all easy, that understand that there are hardworking people out there, because having been a person that has had to stand on my own. Keep in mind, coming here to Ohio, it was just me. When I came to Ohio and I came to work for Proctor Gamble, it was just me. I had to rely on myself and then build a friendship around that. And that's powerful. That's the same experience that you've had, right? Like you come here and it's just you, right?
Yes.
Having to stand on your own 2 feet and having to, have those difficult moments and those lonely moments. And then those moments when you're really proud of yourself. And those moments that test your integrity. But because of your upbringing, my upbringing, my mom had this saying. So she had the education is the only thing I'm going to leave you as an inheritance saying. And she would always say, I do not want anything that doesn't belong to me. And what she meant by that is that every dollar that she had to have earned it. It wasn't given to her and it wasn't taken from anyone. That dollar is because she had earned it. And she still says that saying. It's a saying that I've heard her say since I can remember. And so it's something that is innate in me, that whatever it is, that I have to earn it. And that's just really, really important, because we do have these difficult decisions and these difficult things that we are going through. And we need to make decisions like, it really brings me back to juvenile court, making those decisions of where can we provide services, where can we provide opportunities to help people get on their feet. The Supreme Court has budgets and monies. There's specialty dockets throughout the state of Ohio. There's opportunity to grow those dockets. So like the mental health court, the drug court, the veterans court, these courts that help bring people onto their feet. So how we put our time in and the expenditures is part of what the Supreme Court has authority over. And so, those are very, very important decisions, because the goal is there's always going to be challenges. We're never going to be in a society where everything works perfectly. That's just the reality. The question is how effective are we in addressing those challenges? And do we have folks to have the background and the perspectives so that they are bringing something and enhancing the knowledge base in being able to address those challenges?
Thank you. When people go to the polls, what do you want them to remember about you?
What I want them to remember is that I am here to serve you. And you truly, every single one of you, every single person, absolutely deserves a justice at the Supreme Court that understands that the court is here to serve and to ensure that everyone has a fair chance. And in order to do that, that politics absolutely has no place at the court. Integrity is just part of the job every single day, and being faithful to the law is one of the most powerful ways that you can be faithful to the community. And ultimately, when they get up there, there's only one letter that they need to look for. It'll probably be only candidate on their ballot with the letter Z. So it's really just as easy as the letter Z. I would tell you, a lot of people call me Judge Z. And I am, and I'm happy for that, because I recognize that my name is not easy to pronounce. And to me, it's much more important to engage with people and for folks to feel comfortable talking to me and asking me questions, and for them not to worry about whether they pronounce my name correctly or incorrectly. It's really, that part isn't important. So that's why I say it's as easy as just the letter Z.
Thank you. And how can people reach you?
If you go to my website, which is www.judgemarilynzayas.com, there's a link in there where they can send a message, and we monitor those messages. So there's like a contact link.
Judge Marilyn Zayas.
.com. Yes.
Thank you. And it's been wonderful talking to you for the past hour. You telling us your story and about your candidacy and reaching out to the community. So, what does it mean to you to come on this show to educate and talk to the community?
You know, it means a lot to me because you remind me so much of some of the people that I represented. You know, someone who comes into this country with such a yearning to do the most that they can with their lives and to engage in every opportunity that this country affords them. So watching you in your office, in your beautiful office, and listening to your story, it really touched my heart, because I feel like you're honoring so many immigrants that have come before you and that have come with you and that will come after you, and and recognizing that at the end of the day, other than those that have Native American blood, we are a country of immigrants, and that's where our strength is that immigrant who is willing to come to Ohio, even though they have no family, and build a legal practice and go to law school here. It's yours is a beautiful story, but I'm just so touched because it's been 6 years now since I've been an attorney, and it really reminded me of my clients. A lot of the asylum cases that I represented were people that were coming from West Africa, and from different parts from the Democratic Republic of Congo, from different parts of the continent of Africa. I also represented a lot of people that were from different countries that were part of the former Soviet Union as well. So it's a lot of, unfortunately, many of the hardships that some of our ancestors have gone through, unfortunately, continue to play out in our world.
Thank you. It's an honor to have you on the show, and I really respect you. I respect your journey, and you have been a trailblazer. And I wish you luck with your campaign. And thank you again for your time.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. Have a wonderful weekend.
You too.
All
And
right.
for those of you watching us on YouTube or Facebook or any other medium, thank you for joining us on this episode. And for those listening to this as a podcast, we appreciate you too. Thank you. Until next time, stay safe. Bye for now.
Take care.